like a bridge over troubled waters.
I'm dressed in African garb today because I have many of these outfits. I meant to have all of you for this month who have our African garb to wear it. We've been trying to do this for many years now. I always forget to announce it till afterward. I've been given several of these outfits when I travel to.
Let us see it.
You'll see the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is the. When you're using your arms, you throw it up on your shoulder like that and struggle with it the whole time you have it on. First time I wore this, I was in front of 25,000 people in Lagos or in Benin City, and the pants tie. They don't buckle, and they're really, you can put 3 of us or 4 of us in here. You tie it, and I didn't know how to tie it. I got it. They gave it to me at the last minute, and Oral was with me, and Danny Bell, and a lot of those. They wanted me to get out on the stage and dance with the African dance, and I hesitated. Then when I did, them big old bridges came straight down, bam, hit in front of all those people. I didn't know what I was going to do, but because of this robe, you couldn't tell. I just stepped out of them and kept on dancing. Anyway, that's my first African story. I'll tell you a few more. Our theme for the month of February is spirituality. And my theme this morning, I've chosen African spirituality or African American history and spiritual practices. My subtopic is going to be surviving human spirituality. As far as scientists can tell and tell us, the whole human race originated in Africa. The oldest skeletal remains of a human is a female and goes several 100,000 years back, and maybe 200,000 or 300,000, and it's found in Africa. So that's the oldest remains. So we assume that all of humanity originated on the continent of Africa, which means at one time we were all black. That is until Adam sinned and it turns him up white. But up until then, up until then, everybody else was colored people. So we are at the beginning of a more complete and distinct awareness in this culture, in this time. We are on our way to greater enlightenment, and we will meet each other there in consciousness. Consciousness is everything. That's your first recognition. That's your first identity. Matt sang the song, Bridge Over Troubled Waters. We're all familiar with waters because we floated in water for the first 9 months of our existence. We didn't need oxygen in the mother's womb, and we didn't breathe until we came out. I think we're all still somewhat traumatized from passing through the birth canal, from our mother's womb into the breathing world and learning how to inhale and exhale breath and wind, and we still do that. Water is a metaphor in biblical ideologies of and many others of spirit. So we swam or floated, and by the time that 9-month period had exceeded, most of the water was our own urine. And we came here out of that water. I remember when Julian was born, my dad was in the room, and Julian immediately urinated, and just straight up and straight out. And my dad said, that boy come into the world pissed off. I remember him saying that, and I think that's probably true. So the subtopic is, and I'll finish some of it next week, surviving human spirituality. To survive means to manage or keep going in difficult or demanding, sometimes demeaning circumstances. The Chilean writer Isabel Allende said, sometimes, we don't even know how strong we are until we are forced to bring that hidden strength forward. In times of tragedy or of war, of necessity, people do amazing things. The human capacity, she says, to survival and renewal is awesome. The human capacity to survival and renewal is often. We're all trying to find a bridge over the troubled, traumatized waters that we are and out of which we've come. When we're born, we are 80% water. Really means actually we're spirit. The earth's surface is 70% water. And our brain is 80% water and remains 80% water. We're all waterheads, whether you know it or not. As we age, we become around, as adults, 50 to 60% water. And the older we get, the more hydrated we become. Or less hydrated we become. So human spirituality can be both daring and dangerous because it involves imagination and experimentation with a neglected but natural part of our human essence, and that is spirit, the moisture and mist of ourselves and of our soul. Theologians call this ontology. And ontology is the branch of metaphysics that deals with the nature of being or existence, the fact or state of continued survival, which is, in the broadest sense, infinite reality. From our first breath, we are struggling, if you will, and straining to keep breathing. We have a sense of our infinite self, and we try to somehow capture it. We sense that we'll be here always, that we've always been, and that we'll never not be. But the flesh reminds us of our human capacity. Reminds us that it will stop at some point. We are finite or finishable in our flesh and infinite in our essence, in our spirits. The first African worshipers were people who were in touch with their essence first. Long before Greek or Roman gods or goddesses or myths or mythologies, Africans from the soils of the continent of Africa were spiritualists. They were in touch with their essence, some aspects of animism. They saw animation or life in everything: trees, bees, fleas, flies, water, air, clouds. Everything was spiritual. Everything was conscious of itself, not just consciousness. Everything, even an idea, even a thought, negative or positive, was conscious of itself. Every cell in our bodies, every sinew of flesh, every blood vessel, vein, capillary is conscious of itself and its purpose and lives it out. Trees do that. Birds and bees and fleas, hair follicles. Everything about us is alive. That is our infinite essence. The first Africans understood that, or I should say the first humans understood that. They just happened to be on the continent of Africa, the largest continent in this 70% water surface planet. The largest plot of land that had emerged out of the depths through volcanic or perhaps earthquaking, pushes itself up, and it's the largest land space. And the first humans were there. So, spirituality is natural. It needs to be nurtured, but it's natural. Natural, I think, as you've heard me say, that we come here knowing. That word means science, or science is knowledge. Conscience or conscience means with knowledge. We came here knowing, but between the womb and the tomb, we went through the spiritual amnesia, and we forgot that we agreed to come here, and we've been feeling like foreigners or aliens or even immigrants ever since. Sometimes we feel unwelcomed. I don't think the first humans did, but these latest ones are wrestling with, are we welcomed here? What does it mean for us to be here? Why do we come? We've come basically because we know something. We know what we have forgotten. And we do a lot of teaching, but we really need to do a lot of remembering. If you really remember or reclaim and recapture, recover yourself, you will feel very comfortable in who you are. You believe what you're taught and told. You know what your soul or cells have experienced. I told you before, I'm having these wonderful deja vus, and I remember like, wait a minute. I'm not a stranger. I'm not a victim of circumstances, or I'm not I'm losing my victim consciousness. I have the victorious consciousness. I'm all right. Turn to someone and say, I'm all right. And so are you. Say, you almost as good as me. Infinite, by infinite, I mean limitless, endless, in space, in extent, in time, in size, literally impossible to measure or calculate. That is your essence. We are infinite beings, unfinished and unfinishable. Anybody who defines you has put a limit on you, has put a finish on you, has put a boundary or a border on you. But in your infinity, you cannot end. You've always been. You will always be. Your eternity, past, present, and future. It's all mixed up in one. We think linearly, but we are really non-linear beings. The word linear or line or linen or lineage means a thread that has come from somewhere and threads together to make our lineage. But really, we are multidimensional and interdimensional beings. When Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions, he was saying many dimensions, many places and spaces and phases and levels and compartments and apartments. And we're going in and out of those places and spaces all the time. We don't always realize it. That's our infinite self, our essence, our essential. That is our permanent rather than our accidental self, our immaterial, our immortal, immeasurable, immutable, immediate self. The immediate you has always been, will always be. That's the original spirituality of the human culture and consciousness. We have infinite bodies, but finite spirits. In other words, we're not just human beings seeking or looking for spiritual experiences. We are spirit having an earthly encounter. We have a mind, we have a body, but we are spirit or a spirit. We are essence. So managing both our human self and our holy self, or our sacred, when I say holy, I don't mean perfect, or I mean our sacred, secret self, and our sacred or secular self is a primary charge and challenge of the human existence. We're always trying to bridge our humanity to our divinity. Our science to ourselves. Science and spirituality. What we know, not just what we've learned or what we've been told or what we've been taught, but what we remember from some pre-incarnate reality. All of us have a sense every once in a while that we've been here before. Or we've been around a time or two. When I was coming up, most of the old saints would say, he'd been around here before. He knew he hadn't been around here before. That meant that little energy, it's some kind of cyclical, possibly some kind of reincarnational, karmic re-existence or reappearance. And these kids come out like they know everything. Now they're coming out with these iPhones in their hand. They are in this digital age and they live in the cloud. My friend Musi was here last week from South Africa, and he was talking about African spirituality. And he was his great grandfather was a Presbyterian preacher, had been converted by the missionaries. The other one, Jackson Kosa, was from deep African spirituality. His grandmother and aunts were seers and soothsayers, or they involved in various types of juju and meditation for medication, and they could put curses on or off of you, or hexes, and some had some kind of transcendent reality, and they were all born in that. They venerated the ancestors. Sometimes we don't know whether religion is science or seance. A seance is when people gather, like we have this morning, in the presence of a medium who helps you contact dead things. From Jesus to dreams, to relationships. You're in here looking for something that you think is threatened. Trying to secure something in and about you that is important to you. beginning with your relationship with yourself, with your God. What are you looking for? Why are you religious if you are religious? What does religion mean to you? It's part of the human nature to seek something beyond itself or an extension of itself. We always want to find ways of existing forever. That's why we try to eat right and exercise and rest, and we want to live. Why do we want to live? It's instinctive to want to live. It's instinctive to want to be here forever. We are all survivalists by nature. We're all looking for the bridge over the trouble and traumatized essence of our being. You've often heard me say that life is basically a sexually transmitted disease or dis-ease. Your mom and them were intimate, and you've been without the ease and wrestling with the tensions and the anxieties of human beings being human. The early African slaves somehow reconnected. The only way they could survive that horror is to reconnect with their spiritual, transcendent reality and change or recreate where they were. If they didn't do that, their minds would snap. They couldn't handle being in a foreign land, a different country, a different culture, being humiliated. African Americans, and I'm an American African. That means I was born in America, 4 or 5 generations. There are African Americans and there are American Africans. And African American came from Africa recently, wasn't born here and migrated or immigrated here. But an American African is those of us who were born here, some of us several generations. So we've been Americanized, and we've forgotten some of our deep spiritual background and culture and roots. As a Pentecostal, and the founder of my denomination, Bishop Charles Harrison Mason, Church of God in Christ, was born in 1865. Around the same year that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. He died in 1961. So he was 96, 97 years old. He lived all that time, but he only had a second grade education. He founded the largest Pentecostal denomination in America and one of the largest in the world. And his desire was, he came from a Baptist background, he wanted Africans who were going through discrimination, Jim Crow, the pain of living outside their normal context in this foreign land and treated as foreigners. He wanted them to go back to reconnect with their African spirituality so they could survive better here. Some of the old slave owners and slave trade, remember, slave trade didn't start in America, it started in Britain. They went over to Africa, and the first black-on-black crime was wealthy noblemen or landowners in Africa who sold Africans to the British. British didn't just come over there and take us. Y'all ain't that strong. We've been dealing with alligators and menacing animals for centuries and living in the rough, rugged, rustic world, and then somebody with a wig and a painted face would come over there and just take us. No. Somebody gave us, somebody sold us, and some Africans are still selling out their own. Some of the wealthy leaders of certain countries and cultures that are involved in various aspects of witchcraft, as you would call it in this part in the Western world, but they're still killing their own. That's one of the saddest scenarios in our world, is what is happening in irresponsible, corrupt leaders on the continent of Africa. I've encountered many. You'll hardly ever hear about that, because certain powers want that to occur so they can still get the diamonds and the minerals and some of the most powerful assets to our society in the world come out of the continent of Africa. But the Africans were in touch with the minerals and the gold and the pearls and the diamonds, or not pearls in the sea, but the diamonds and what was in the earth, the gas and the oil or whatever was there. They somehow saw themselves as part of that. We still bring that to ourselves. Now, over here in America, as a Pentecostal, we believe in transcendence, that you actually go into a trance. Our worship services were tense and sometimes loud and interactive. The Native Americans you can hear the and the dancing and the beating and the repetition of the culture. They used to be called, the Great Spirit used to be called the Great Mystery. in Native American culture. It was a mystery or a missed story. Nobody really knew who God was. Everybody experienced God, but nobody really knew for sure. I love to embrace the mystery. I've had seminary training and I've studied for the last 50 years of my life, but I don't know God. I experience God. Any God that's knowable may not be the real one. I don't know air, but I breathe it. I don't know light, but I love it. I drink water, but I don't know water. I had trees in my yard. We talk every once in a while. You've heard of hugging trees. Paganism has been heathenized, but paganism is actually people who lived off the land and loved the land and understood the land, understood rural culture. They were people who lived in the rustic rural areas of society, and they were more spiritual, more in touch with the land and with the earth than those in the urban areas who were gotten so much into automation and technology and science until they missed their spiritual essence. What's happening in the next wave in our country and culture is I believe that we will reconnect with our science and our spirituality. I think they're very similar. Scientists study the unknowables. Scientists try to prove something to be real based on the proof that can be found about it. It's a lot of experimentation. We're all an experiment now. If some higher intelligence helped to create us and we're hybrid aliens, I think my children are. We sense that we're from some other space or some other place. When they say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, you ever read that book? At least women are from other planets. Men from Mars, women from Venus. You got to read the book. It talks about our psyche and how we are all otherworldly. We all have a spiritual part of ourself that is from our original curiosity with the stars. Astrology, astrology, because sheep or shepherds spent time in the pastures, and at night when the sky was black, they could see these stars, and they spent hours just looking at the stars. Aster in Greek. Astrology, the logic of the stars, the logic of the movements of the planets and planes, the outer reaches and regions and rhythms of consciousness. They studied them, and we're still very interested in that other part of our essence. You're very curious about who you are and who you aren't. And as we move into more of a spiritual age, this age of enlightenment called the age of Aquarius, we're learning a different kind of syncopation. We want to walk in sync or cadence rather than decadence of our essence. We want to be in touch and in tone with ourselves. This culture is not so much trying to please everybody else. These young people live in this other world where they look in the cloud and in the mist, and they're way out there somewhere, and they don't register with their parents, they don't register with the culture. Try to teach them a Bible verse, and they don't even know what you're talking about. They ask you, where did the Bible come from? Why do you believe what you believe? Do you really believe that a man spoke with a serpent? Or a woman spoke with a serpent? Do you believe that your God is angry and that he repented that he made you and that he has this customized torture chamber for all the people that don't believe in him? Do you believe in a God who says, I love you and I give my son for you, and if you don't believe this, I'm going to burn the hell out of you? These kids will ask these questions very irreverently, and we don't know how to answer them yet. I think that's surviving the spiritual essence, the survival of our own spirituality, and spirituality simply is a question. It's a great big question mark. What the hey? What? Why? When? Where? What are you doing here? Why are you still here? Most of us lost loved ones or friends recently. I'm looking at the bench. They're here this morning. Jennifer just lost her baby brother just a few days ago. He was only 58. Colin was as close to him. Colin's known Ozzy since he was 12 because he was dating his sister. Ozzy was in perfect health, as far as we know, having a meeting with some members of his business, 4 of them, Skyping, and he just stops breathing. His wife's out of town. His son's upstairs. One of the men on the call called 911 to go to the house and had to knock on the window to wake up the son, who could rush to the door, and he may have had to literally pass his father's body to open the door for the paramedics to come in. This was, they just buried a brother less than a year ago. So he has transitioned. We were all struggling. We all gathered down at St. John's. David was there. Marlon was there. We all rushed down to hug them, to say, what can we do but hold you and hug you? We have no explanations. And try to tell ourselves that Ozzy is in another room and another form or another floor in the household of God. He's in another dimension. Every Sunday we have you stand for people that you lost. And we remember the loved ones. And we're very curious about the mystery of death, aren't we? We hope that there's something after this life. That ain't hell. Hell, there's enough hell here. I always say our loved ones who've transitioned, they're in the land of the living. We're in the land of the dying. Remember I told you a few weeks ago that when somebody asks you how you doing, they're basically asking you, how you dying? And you say, well, I'm dying pretty good today. And if the day isn't going so well, you say, I ain't dying so good today. How you dying? I'm dying all right. We're all going to whatever that space and place is on the other side. That's part of the mystery. In my little Pentecostal experiences, I don't say little, they were loud and luscious. I was 6 years old when I remember having my first burst of transcendence. In our culture, everybody had, in our denomination, we had to get the baptism of the Holy Ghost to be totally whelmed with Holy Ghost. The reason the Christian churches call it Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit is because they believe in unholy ghosts and unholy spirits. African culture believes in spirit possession, that not only will a spirit possess a person, but a tree and an animal. A spirit can possess the weather, that you can be possessed by an energy, a spirit or an essence. And sometimes that was the dancing. I've seen the whirling dervishes out of the transcendent part of Islam, Sufis, and how they would go into a trance, spinning. I saw it down here at the Performing Arts Center with Rabbi Fitzman on one side and Bishop Slattery, the Catholic bishop, on the other side. We didn't know what the whirling dervishes were. And when they started whirling, we started dervishing. I said, what is that? Those men stood straight and then they would step forward and just spin for several seconds and then step back in line, not wobbly, not anything. And when it first happened, I remembered my first Pentecostal experience of dancing in church. And my children were behind me, and I said, wait, look, kids, watch this. And I said to Bishop Slattery and to Rabbi, did y'all know this was going to happen? They said, no. We didn't know what this was. I don't know where those men went, what level or dimension they slipped into, but it was something similar to what I went through as a kid in my transcendent moments. I would never have gotten up and danced in church when I invited my friends in junior high school, and I did. There was a big old musical one Sunday, and I invited my friends, a couple of my girlfriends, and I knew they'd love the music, and then I started experiencing what we call the anointing. And there was an intensity, there was a crescendo in the energy in the room, and the people were rocking, and they were clapping, and you could hear them beating the floor, and the drums were going, and the music was, and nobody was smoking pot. Nobody was high on anything but spirit, with essence. And I felt it coming up on me, and I said, God, please, we used to call it being touched by God. I said, God, don't touch me today. My girlfriend is here and they ain't even saved. I don't need this. I didn't bring these people here to make a fool in front of them. Before I could get it out, I was out on the floor, dancing all over that house, all over that church, and crying. And when I came back to myself, all my friends was dancing too. All of them got the ghost that morning. Ain't that beautiful? And I was so excited. I was about 14 or 15 years old. I was so excited. But that experience, I can describe it, but I can't define it. I can't explain it. I'm mystified by it. I think that there's something mystical, and I think this whole desire for people to have transcendent experience, whether it is with a joint or LSD or some conscious altering experience, we want something other than our material reality. We want to find and experience the other self, the fearless, courageous self. The only reason I've not been involved or necessarily drawn to drugs is because it's hard for me to imagine that anything could be any more ethereal than the experiences I've had in my transcendent moments. Now, it's easy for me to talk that way because I was brought up in that culture where you go someplace and you get happy and you cry and you smile and you have a dream or you go into a trance. I saw all that stuff. Lord, if that happened here today, y'all be running out of every window. Touch that organ a little bit there, David. That Hammond B organ. I'm not gonna die. I ain't gonna do nothing. But I just. Now imagine yourself in a space, and he could have done it on the other keyboards too, because sometimes we go to those places in a song. It could be opera. If you heard Gerald's daughter sing in the last service, it was just ethereal, powerful. Or it could be your head's a little raggedy because you've had a little extra communion wine. When we were downtown at Trinity, they have communion every service. And Jesus is quoted as saying, drink ye all of it. They have communion. I mean, the first time I took their wine, it was so strong and potent. I said, I wasn't used to it, so my head started spinning, and it was just a little wafer stuck in some... And I said, sir, y'all need to tone this stuff down. He said, no, we have an open cup. And that everybody can come and literally put their mouth on the cup and drink the wine. So they have the stronger the wine, the more of an antiseptic for germs. I said, oh, well, tell me something. But sometime I'd get there and do their 9 o'clock service, and there was one at 10 and one at 11, and we came in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and every time the service finished, we went back into the chancel area and drank ye all of it. We had to drink all the wine for that service, and then all the wine for the next service. By the time they got to the 1 o'clock service, I was stepping in there like this, hey, y'all. It was a ghost in there, but it wasn't holy. It was spirits, but it was wonderful. Somebody said, where you find 3 or 4 Episcopalians, you will find a 5th. But then there was those times when the organ would play softly, and we go into prayer, and most people of color, even Islamic people do it, but you notice the face. You get a little serious. You're really reverential. You think you're going to encounter God. So you go someplace. And we tell you, close your eyes or bow your head. People do that. And we expected some type of a crescendo. We expected some kind of translucent, transcendent moment when we slipped out of ourselves. And it's like we went into another room. We went into another realm. We slipped quietly into another way and another compartment of our own selves. I get emotional just thinking about it. And while there, you hear stuff and sense stuff and see stuff of how to correct a relationship or deal with something on the job or endure what would have been in unendurable pain, loss, demeaned, insulted, enslaved, humiliated. They learned how to go somewhere else. The best we do now is with some type of mind-altering drug. But the point is, there is another place and another space. I can only tell you out of my own experience. It is so real.
Yes, it is.
And it's so wonderful, and it's so free. That's not just African spirituality. That's human abilities to transcend itself. Opioid use, it's a pain desensitizer. We're all hurting. We're all trying to manage our pain. And so they take a drug to dismiss them or to desensitize them to a reality over which they have no control, and they couldn't stand it. So you don't demean somebody because they're taking a painkiller, or you don't mistreat them because they abuse alcohol. They're in pain. And if we don't show them how to monitor that in ways that are healthy, just like we do health food, that's our medicine. People who eat special foods. I like colored greens. I'm learning how Sarah will teach me how to cook kale. Sarah Jordan can cook kale to make it sound like coloreds. Wrap your arms around yourself. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul. Rejoice. Take joy in what you hear, and let it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. That's a very spiritually cuddling song for me. Those kinds of experiences are cuddly. And again, that's not just African spirituality. If your kids are looking for a joint or a drug or your best friend or you, all you're asking for is the other part of you that is guiltless and shameless and maybe even in your mind sinless. You want to go back to your spiritual nudity. The part when you were unedited, unaudited, undressed. And I'm telling you, that's available to us all. Hug yourself once again and say, I'm all right.
Will you pray?
Yes, absolutely. While your hands are around, you're hugging yourself, you're hugging your essence, I want you first to realize and respect who you are. We're living in an age of lots of science. We used to sing about God. He's got the whole world in his hand. But when you hold your cell phone, you got your whole world in your hand these days. What's happening? What kind of transition is occurring? Thank you that there is the ageless, spaceless, nameless, faceless reality we title God, the unknowable entity or intelligence. In the farthest reaches and regions and rhythms of consciousness, we experience our otherness, our ethereal self. Thank you, wonderful essence, that you are real to us on the levels in which we experience and understand you. Thank you for healing and helping us find relief and release from our bondage to pain and agony and hurt and anger, unforgiveness and offense. Neutralize us. Give us generic passion for that dimension, that level, that place, that space that some of us call holy. If we need a trance to meditate so we can spiritually medicate and be healed, we say yes. Take those same arms now and just stretch high. Just stretch your back, your bones. That's good. Oh, wow. That's a little yoga. It's a little, now shake them, shake the energy around. Sometimes there's deadly negative energy. Sometimes this process can make a tumor disappear. I don't know how. Can make a pain go away. It can relieve you from migraine headaches. Something can happen because you can go there on your own by yourself and stay there as long as you can. Now give somebody a little gentle high five and say, I got you, I got you. We've got you, we've got this. Now, some of you don't get to hear David play that Hammond B3, but I want to do Matthew on the drums. When we went to church, we did this. That beat, that repetition started something. The vibration, the syncopation. Come on, hit it, David. Hey. Something about the beat. Now, in African spirituality, I close with this, and we have just a couple of announcements, we're leaving. They beat the drum, the leather. It was like a membrane. And they would beat the drum in syncopation and repetition until spiritually it represented some kind of penetration into the realm, broke into the skins, and the energy from the higher realms will come into the lower realms and infuse us with a clarity and a glory that enabled us to endure life and to indulge life and to be in touch with our beings as human. So the beat, the drum, the vibrations, remember, you got 100,000 miles of arteries in you, and through those arteries are vamping and coursing blood or salt water, hemoglobin. You're full of moisture. And so vibrations are always occurring inside of you. You are a living, walking, scientific, spiritual alien from another planet. God bless you. We love you. Enjoy your life.
You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.